unstoppable kick-ass confidence. Are you ready?
Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted show with Christopher Rausch, where we help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. Now please welcome our host, Christopher Rausch.
Now please welcome Christopher Rausch. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Hello, hello. Happy Tuesday evening. It is 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, your place for the Raw and Unscripted show with yours truly, Christopher Rausch, the place where I help you overcome your self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. Thank you guys for being here, whether it's live or on the replay, or whether you're watching the video cast or listening to the podcast. We are available where podcasts are sold. Podcasts aren't sold, obviously, guys. So wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, go check it out. You can simply go in and Raw and Unscripted with Christopher Rausch. You can find it everywhere. We're on Amazon. I found out we're on Amazon Music or something like that. So yes, go check out the Raw and Unscripted show. Please subscribe to the podcast. That would be amazing and awesome. I would appreciate you guys so much for doing that. What's up? We got Ray in the house. He says, good evening, Misfits for Life. If you guys are new to the show, Misfits for Life is the name I came up with for my band of gypsies, the people that, and I don't like the word follow, but the people that I congregate with, the people that kind of get it, we're misfits of society. So I say that we're misfits for life because everybody's got to belong somewhere, and I like to belong with the misfits. So that makes us unique. That's not a degrading term. That makes us unique, special, and above all, kick-ass unstoppable. Yeah, kick-ass unstoppable, right, Ray? We never stop. We may slow down, we may park, we may ponder, we may regress a little bit, but we never stop. We're always in pursuit of what it is that's going to make us greater, what it is that's going to elevate our opportunities in life to really achieve the fullness and the complete capacity of what it is that we're here to experience while we're in human form. So please hang on to that. For those of you guys that are just now tuning in, you just missed an amazing nugget. So go back and watch that, listen to that. We got Mary Sterling in the house. She says, good evening, Christopher and everyone else. Thank you, Mary Sterling, for being here tonight. Of course. Ray's already settling into his position. He's like, hey, go check out ChristopherRausch.com. I appreciate you, buddy. Especially you can go find the podcast there. You can find my events page. You can see what I'm doing, whether it's the Raw and Unscripted show, whether it's Clubhouse, whether it's the Unfiltered Experience, my other show on Friday night. So yeah, you can always get me there. So thank you, Ray, for putting that back up, for putting that up there. We got Tim Gillette in the house. Holy shit. It's like a reunion. It's a class reunion. We got Brian Wright in the house that we're going to be bringing on here in just a second. We got Tim Gillette. I was just checking out Tim Gillette's show. Tim and I have known each other for many, many, many years, as well as my guest that I'll be bringing on here tonight. So thank you, Tim, for joining us. Got to get you on the show as well. It's been a minute. And Ray's already filling out the website for our guests. So anyways, one thing I wanted to mention to you guys, please, if you followed the show for any amount of time, you guys know that I'm on the board of directors and I specifically support Help Heal Humanity, www.helphealhumanity.org. Right now we're looking for a few key positions. A couple of them are board members. So if you're interested in volunteering your time with the board of directors for an amazing organization that is out to help literally heal humanity, please go to helphealhumanity.org, check it out, or direct message me if you happen to know of a treasurer, if you happen to know of a grant writer. We're in the process of hiring for those positions. They are non-paid positions, but it is truly a phenomenal organization. And watch out for Help Heal Humanity. There's going to be some stuff coming out pretty soon where we are going to really attempt to unify those individuals in this world who want to step up and really put an end to all the bullshit, all the divisiveness, all the name calling, all the other shit. And let's combine our efforts. Let's seek to understand, then to be understood, and let's really, have conversations instead of the whole finger pointing stuff. So I've got some key people in different segments of the world who are passionate about this. We've got some new hashtag campaigns coming out, and it's all designed to address mental health, mental wealth, really designed for us to stop all this stuff and really start to look inward and to heal ourselves so that we can heal the world and leave it a better place for who we are and what we do. So I appreciate that. Yes. Jacqueline Rose is in the house. What's up? She says, good evening, Christopher. Thank you for being here. It's great to have you guys here, whether you're live or on the replay. As always, appreciate you guys. So the gentleman that I'm going to have on the show tonight is Brian Wright. And I've known Brian for many, many, many years. I believe we met back in 2013. And the thing I have to say about Brian is he has really been a committed individual to his craft, to the craft of communication, to the craft of writing books, to the craft of doing a very successful podcast called Success Profiles Radio. And in accoutrement to that, he does the Success Profiles magazine as well. But tonight we're going to be talking about how you should be writing your book. As you guys know, I'm writing my book right now. So without any further ado, please welcome to the Raw and Unscripted show, none other than my guest tonight, Mr. Brian Wright. Brian, what's going on, brother? Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. It's been a minute.
It is. It better be good to be here. It's been a minute since we've caught up. Literally, we had like 4 minutes behind stage before we went live. Man, it's long overdue. So thank you for being here. And I look forward to this conversation tonight. Like I told you before, before we go live, every once in a while, I'll just be flashing comments. We got Tim Gillette in the house, like I said, and Ray's here commenting. He says, welcome, Brian. We've got some amazing people here supporting the show. So, this is the Raw and Unscripted show, but one question that actually did pop into my mind as I was downstairs writing my book earlier this afternoon, thank you very much, I got 3,000 words in, was really, when I think about all the books that have been written, and a buddy of mine, were talking about this the other day, we were talking about some of the classic personal development books, right? The psycho-cybernetics and all the different things from W. Clement Stone, and just everything is literally, when you think about it, has been written. So why would anybody want to write a book these days in life when everything pretty much has already been written?
I think because people have their own perspective to share. Only you have your story. True. And I think sometimes when we hear someone speak a truth, it may go over our heads until we hear it explained a slightly different way. It's one of those, let's just think about it like this. Let's just say that Star Wars is your favorite movie. Let's just say that. And let's say that you make a commitment to watch Star Wars at least once a year. You might pick up something brand new every time you watch it that you didn't catch before.
Good point.
Absolutely. And you're watching it from a different place of understanding. It's the same reason why people go to the same events over and over again. They'll hear a lot of information that they heard the first time, but you're at a different place in your journey. It'll hit you differently. And you might be able to apply things differently this time than you did the last couple of times. And so you're always going to grow. And the experience will be different because all the same people won't necessarily be there. And sometimes I like go to events, not just for the speakers, but because of who else ends up attending. Sometimes I meet people who become my very best friends for life. And those are people who attended rather than people who spoke.
Right. No, I think that's beautiful. And I love the way you answered that, Brian, because, it really, truly is. I think about the things that I do and the things that I say and my buddy, Jock, who's on here right now, it will agree, is I consider it everything that I say and I do is planting seeds. I'm not out looking to say something that people are going to have their mind necessarily blown. But my thing is like, I actually told my wife about it the other day. I'm like, I'm tired of talking about the same stuff over and over again because I talk about it so much. But at the same time, I know that one time for you or one time for somebody else is going to be a different time where that seed that gets planted is going to be the one thing that they needed to hear in such a way that I said at that time that's going to cause that additional thought and cause that additional action. So I love that. And to your point as well, we're all unique people. So we all are going to have a unique perspective and a unique way of telling our story. So I'm all with you. Actually, I believe that everybody should write a book about their life story. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think is helpful in that process of doing that?
I think everyone does have a message to share. And I think there are reasons why people don't write a book. Number one, they may think they're not very good writers, or they've been told that they're not very good writers, therefore they disqualify themselves. Another reason people don't write their books is because they aren't sure that they have something legitimate to say, and they're not sure that people will care about their message. I think that's absolutely false. In fact, I think we've all been through stuff, and I think there's something that we can say. And when people put off writing the books, I usually tell them the person who really, really, really needs you is going to get denied your help because you're putting it off. Dude. So write your book. And then finally, the other reason why people don't write their books is because they don't have time. And so A, you'll make time for the things that are really important to you. And B, you can always hire that help out if you want to.
Nice. I love that. In thinking about writing it and writing the story, and the reason why I framed it that way is that everybody should write their story. The people that follow the show, and you may have seen this in social media, I've been writing my book about the journey of my mother and myself, the homeless journey and everything else that we've been doing. I've been writing it seriously since last year. And one of the things I've had challenges with is it's one thing for me to say, hey, Brian, I was homeless and, I got abused by my mom and I got my ass kicked at school. It's one thing for me to tell you that topically and kind of, at a surface level, but it's another thing when you're sitting there with your hands on the keyboard and you're having to go back and revisit some of these situations that, define who you are today, but having to get into the weeds with some of that stuff for me was a lot more challenging than I really thought it was going to be. But I've used the opportunity to really kind of dig into some of that stuff that I had a different perspective on back then to really heal more of myself in my journey. What are your thoughts on that in digging into some of this stuff? Because I know you've written some books and I know you've helped a lot of people write their books. What are your thoughts on digging into that stuff and the therapeutic process?
Oh, it is very therapeutic. In fact, I recently did a book called The Greatest Lessons I Learned from My Dad. And my dad passed away almost a year ago now.
I know. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. And I knew at some point I was going to write about it. I wasn't ready right away because I had to heal first and I had to process and I had to figure out what exactly I could do to honor my dad.
Right.
And finally, about 6 months after, I said, you know what, I think maybe I'm ready. But what I also wanted to do was to involve collaborators. And so I had 28 people share their short stories. And so I didn't feel the burden to write the whole book myself. I had 28 other people share 750 words or less about the greatest lessons learned from their dad too. Now, the first part of the book was my story and my reason for writing the book and a few of the things that I learned. Of course, I thought of more things that I learned after the book was published. I'm like, oh, I could have put that in there.
Right.
Someone said, well, you can do a volume 2. I'm like, volume 2. I don't know.
You could do an updated version.
I don't know if it's really the kind of book that you make a sequel to.
Yeah. You could do an online. You could do an online addendum for online orders or something like that. And like, here's the extra juice.
Maybe. But I will say that out of this whole thing, there is a greatest lessons anthology that I am creating, a series that I am creating. Greatest lessons I learned from my mom, from my grandparents, from my teacher, from my coach, from my clients, from my dad. So that's going to be a whole series, and I have the domain for greatestlessonsbook.com. So it's that I just taken. So, but anyway, I'm working on the second Greatest Lessons book right now, and I've got 28 people who are collaborating with me on this one too. Many of them are the same, and some of them are different. But I do believe that everyone has a story to share. In fact, I do tell people, if you aren't sure you have enough for a solo book, be a part of a collaborative book project. Submit a short chapter. It'll gain confidence. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I started my Facebook group, Authorpreneur Live. And I post something of value every single day relating to the topic of writing. In fact, today's post I wrote about, or was either today's post or yesterday's post, I wrote about finding lessons in the adversity that you've gone through. If you've gone through something really terrible, ask yourself, what lesson can you learn from that? Now, back in 2014, and you know this story very well, I had a life-threatening illness, and I paused my radio show for 3 months because I was physically unable to continue for a while. But I had swine flu virus and pneumonia, and it was life-threatening, like I said.
I remember that.
And while I was laying in that hospital bed, because I had all the time in the world to think about things, there were 3 things that came up for me all the time. You know, the greatest lessons that I learned from that experience. Number 1, treasure your friends and family. Number 2, take nothing for granted. And number 3, be aggressively thankful for everything that goes on, because you never know when it's all going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself writing magazine articles and doing Facebook Lives about those 3 things, in describing what happened to me and how I healed through that and what I got out of it. And so think about some of the stuff you've been through, some of the traumatic stuff that you've been through. What great lessons can you glean from that? And it's the same thing I did with my dad book. My dad passed away. So it gave me an opportunity to reflect upon how he really impacted my life. And it allowed me time to go back and revisit some of the funny stories that happened. And the stories that I shared were always interactions that Dad and I had where I learned something. It wasn't necessarily me observing Dad interacting with other people. I didn't tell those stories. I told stories specific to how it impacted my growth. In fact, I'll share one very, very quick one.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, share a couple.
Yeah. So some neighbors had moved a couple streets down in our neighborhood, and they were having a house built. Well, the house was built, the yard hadn't been planted yet, and so there are clumps of dirt all over the place. And we just thought it'd be really fun, just for whatever reason, to throw dirt on the roof. Well, I grabbed the biggest clump of dirt I could find, and I tried heaving it onto the roof, and I missed. I ended up breaking the garage door window.
Uh-oh.
And they all pointed at me like, you did this.
How old were you?
This. Yeah. I ran home. I was
How old were you at the time?
Maybe 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, not very old. I should have known better than to think that I could heave a giant clump of a big rock of dirt onto the roof. I couldn't throw it that high. I ended up breaking.
Hey, well, we're kids. We believe everything. We think anything's possible. So go for it. Yeah, why not?
Exactly. So I ran home and I closed my bedroom door and I laid on the floor next to my bed. And a minute or two after I closed my door, I heard the phone ring. And then I heard the big heavy steps walking toward my room. I'm like,
Oh no.
Oh no. And I hear a knock on the door. Brian, open up. And so I did. And he said, did you break the window with the neighbors? Now there were obviously the witnesses. I couldn't bluff my way through it. So I said, I did. He said, well, you're going to have to pay for this. I said, well, how much is it going to be? And he very wisely asked me, well, how much do you have? Yes.
Damn.
And so I reached.
You got 35 cents.
I grabbed my Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer billfold, and yes, it was red. I had $3.
I had Star
Wars. And then I had 89 cents and change sitting in the bottom of the drawer. And I said, I have $3.89. And he said, well, that's how much it is. I was devastated. Well, it was obviously much more than that, even in the 1970s.
Oh, yeah.
But he wanted me to feel the financial pain. So he wanted me to pay for the window. And so I did. Another story, very quickly.
What did you gain out of that situation?
What I gained out of that situation, always tell the truth.
Love it.
Because you're going to get found out. I'm a terrible liar. You will always be found out. The truth will always be revealed. So just be honest and own your mistakes.
Amen, brother. Amen. I want you to give me another one, but I want to capture some of these comments. The beautiful people in the house tonight. Let's see. Let's go back up here. Thank you, Ray, for putting that up. We got Jock in the house. He says, "What up?" Jock's he's like this Scottish gang guy. And he says here, "Hey, brother, I hope you are still shining your light." Yes, we are shining lights. Actually, Ray and John Jock were having a conversation back, and Ray says here, yes sir, no holes in my bucket today. Yes, we don't want any holes in our bucket. Mary Sterling says here, great to see you again, Brian. They're always talking, they're just having little chit chats here. John, I always have to call him Jock even though it says John. He says it's never been written with your voice, and your voice has its own audience, which is something we were talking about earlier again, Brian. Monica, thank you so much for being here. Monica's here live with us. She's a misfit for life, definitely. She says truth, different perspectives, big time. Jacqueline says here, I wish I knew what kind of book to write, how I wasted most of my life, how I lost my brother when I was 9. It traumatized me. We could talk about that in a little bit because I do have that question for you. And even John says here, or Jock says here, yeah, bro, seeds. Jock, you're in a weird mood tonight, buddy. You're like, yeah, bro, what's up? He's Scottish as the fucking day is long, dude. So it's funny when I hear him say that because I could hear him saying it in his accent. He's a beautiful person. He says, "Let's all be gardeners." Yes. We got to be gardeners. John says here, a publisher told me that I was not a good writer, and now I am on my 5th book and written for additional magazines. Stay the fucking course and believe. So true. No, so true. Let's see. Oh, here we got Monica says here, Jacqueline, I invite you to pause. Ask what shall I write about? Be open, and the answer will come. So true. We're going to talk about creative opportunities for things. Well, actually, what do you think about that, Brian? What do you think about that opportunity?
And here's something that I do tell people: when you are wondering what to write about, sometimes the best thing you can do is ask people you trust. If I were to write a book, what would you expect me to write about?
Ooh. Yeah, I would expect Jacqueline to write about being unstoppable. I mean, I think if I remember, she's Irish, and she's been to hell and back, and she has the roadmap to say, here's what you did to buckle up.
Yeah. And the answers may surprise you. And if several people gravitate to the same answer or same cluster of ideas, you might have something there. So ask people, if I was to write a book, what would you expect it to be about?
That's a great one.
Sometimes we just can't get out of our own way. We can't see our own greatness. And sometimes, when someone says, hey, you're really good at such and such, that might be another clue. Here's probably the biggest clue of all. When people constantly ask you, how did you do that?
Yeah.
That's your book.
Oh, that's such a great one, Brian. I appreciate that. So what kind of book would you want me to write? What kind of book, aside from a personal development book, use your creative mind, what other kind of book would you see me writing?
I think you could absolutely write a book about making a difference, using your platform to make a difference, because you really do care about people a lot. And I love that about you.
Just a little bit.
A little bit anyway.
Yeah. You know what's funny is sometimes I care so much about people, and the next time I just want to punch them right in their throat and watch them die. It's pretty crazy. And I say that with all love and sincerity, but no, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I think I'm not sure. So Jock is asking here, Brian, what was your greatest lesson from your dad? When you think about writing that book and everything, and in retrospect, encompassing everything, what were a couple of the biggest lessons? And before you answer that, I want to give you a chance to really think about that. Something you said is very critical, and I want people to really key in on this. Is, when people sit there and tell me all the time, like, Chris, I'm so tired of going through tough times. I've been through this time. I've been through this time. I beat cancer. I beat this. I've done this. I did this. I'm so tired of it. And so I tell them, I'm like, so when you look back on your life, when did you learn the most? When did you grow the most? When things were easy and simple, or when things were challenging? And they're like, begrudgingly, they're like, oh, when they were challenging. I'm like, okay, so tell me about a time that you went through something challenging, and after that you went through another time and you were glad that you went through that challenging time because you were able to use your experiences to get through that time. Oh my God, and my mom died and I went through all this different stuff. Then I got cancer 2 years later. It taught me how to be resilient. I'm like, so if your mother hadn't gone through that, how do you think you would have handled cancer? Oh my God, I wouldn't have handled it all. Okay, so you see with me that the challenging times are the times that when you grow the most, right? Yeah. And when I reframe that into that perspective for people, they do really see that they don't want to go through it. I don't want to go through it again. But at the same time, we see the value in being able to see that the challenges really do bring us a lot of fruit in our life. So back to Jock's question, what were some of the biggest lessons that you did learn from your dad?
I think my dad always wanted me to know that I could do anything I really, really wanted to. I think my challenge for a good share of my life is not knowing what I really, really wanted to do. And I bounced around jobs, and I think that frustrated my parents for a while. It frustrated me too.
Of course.
I didn't know what I really, really, really wanted to do, but I figured it out. I started my radio show, not really knowing what it would evolve to, but I knew that radio was something that I was pretty good at. I could be pretty good at. And started interviewing people and interviewing people that I really admired and people that I wanted to sit at the feet at and learn from for an hour at a time. And 10 years later, I'm still doing it.
That's so awesome. I know when we first got on camera and I was sitting there thinking about how long we've known each other, you started that way back then, and you've been consistent about that. Talk to us about what it takes to have that consistency. Cause I know I get that every once in a while. People think that the Raw&Unscripted show, like you said, I've been on the show before. I'm like, no, that was the Kickass radio show. That was the one we did 2 years before starting Raw&Unscripted, and Raw&Unscripted now has been going for 3 years now, I think. Talk to us about being able to stay the course through those times.
Well, doing my radio show is my happy hour. So I look forward to it. And I do my show on Monday on purpose because it gives me the weekend to prepare. So I can prepare on Saturday or on Sunday or on Monday if I need to, because now I don't have a job. So I work for myself, and I've been completely independent for 4.5 years now. So if I want to prepare on Monday, I can. And I've refined my preparation process to where it doesn't take me nearly as long as it used to. But I still do a lot of preparation. I do a lot of research. But being consistent means picking the same time every day or every week, 6 Eastern, every Monday. That's when I do my show. And I've only had to pause my show twice in 10 years. Once was when I had my life-threatening illness. I was physically unable to talk for more than a minute at a time without feeling completely physically exhausted. Wow. So I could not do my show until I was able to do that again. So I was on pause for 3 months. And last year I was on pause for 6 weeks after my dad passed.
Wow.
But 450 episodes and 10 years.
That is crazy. And you've interviewed a lot of key individuals. When I was going back through and look at your repertoire, I was pretty impressed with, the caliber of people that you've spoken to. So I want to talk about that here in just a second. I want to stay on the book stuff for a little bit. When people sit there and think about writing a book, the whole process seems so arduous. It seems so like overwhelming, like, oh my God. What are some tips that you would recommend for people who are thinking about outlining a book? What are some strategies that you use? I have a couple that I used as well. Talk to us about strategies to get people just in the mindset of like, okay, I've got an idea, I've got a little bit of a framework, but what do you recommend, like as far as software goes as well? Because I use Scrivener, so you could talk about that. What are some ideas that you use that you suggest to people?
When I wrote my first book, it was a student leadership book. And I wanted to use that as a way to speak at schools. And so one day I was sitting outside on the patio with my legal pad, and I wrote a question at the top: what makes an excellent leader? My goal was to come up with 21 answers to that question. And each of those answers would become short chapters.
Yeah.
I came up with 30. And as I started writing, I realized those 30 began to merge into 21 because some of the ideas were pretty close together.
Right.
And I couldn't really separate them anymore. I ended up with 21, and my book ended up being about 96 pages. Not a big, huge book, but it was enough. And I don't believe in fluffing things around. I say what you got to say and be done. Respect people's time.
Yeah, I love my book about my mom's not going to be like that, but I love small books like this that you can literally sit down for a couple of 2-3 hours at the most and kind of walk away like, bam, I got it. It's something thick that takes, at least for me, it takes a long time to read. So I like the idea of those small books.
Right. So ask your global question and come up with as many answers to that global question as possible. And those answers can be chapters. Something else you can do is, let's say that you're in real estate. And let's just say that you work with either buyers or sellers, whichever it is. You do this all the time, but the people you're working with are doing this maybe for the first time. So think about all the questions that you tend to get about buying or selling a house.
Mm-hmm.
The answers to those questions could be short chapters as well. Now, I also tell people to repurpose content that you've already used or have already created.
Yeah.
In fact, I did an explainer video recently, and my VA came up, I did the audio, and she did a couple versions of an explainer video, 7 top things you can do to find content for your book. And so, I'll just talk about a couple of them here. If you have a Facebook group, if you run a Facebook group and you are struggling for content about your topic, you have some ideas, but not a ton of ideas, ask your group for their stories. I coached a client about how she was writing her book about how to overcome and how to be resilient and just scenarios which require resilience. And she had some stories, but she was concerned that she didn't have enough to fill out an entire book. And then she mentioned that she runs 2 Facebook groups. I said, here's your answer. Ask those groups to share their overcoming and resilience stories. And many of these groups had women in them, and they shared their divorce stories. They shared their abuse stories and all the losing their job stories. But she had 25 stories that she included in her book based on content and feedback from other people. And that gave her ideas about the things that she could also then share too. So tap into your network for content. That is a good way to find content for your book. I have one client, and we're just about done. She did a series of Facebook Lives around a single topic. And those we are converting into a book. And we're probably on the 2-yard line in terms of getting that one done. I'm waiting for one more thing from my client. And then my VA is going to add that to the book. And then we're going on Amazon. It'll be sometime this month. I have another client coming back to real estate again. She does a real estate podcast. We used 20 episodes of her show to create 20 chapters for her book. And so we're working on that. And so she's repurposing podcast episodes because every episode of that show was about a different topic within real estate. So we're doing that. Sometimes you may have created a course. Another one of my clients created an online course, and we converted that into a book. And where he used the book to then steer people back to his course again. In fact, Book Authority has named his book the #1 LinkedIn book of all time.
Wow.
Now, as a ghostwriter, I remain anonymous, but he did give me credit in the acknowledgments for helping him in his journey. So that was cool.
Oh, nice.
So look to content you've already created. If you think you're starting with a blank slate, maybe you're really not.
Mm-hmm. so true. It's so true. Thank you for sharing that. I want to grab some of these comments, and then I've got another question for you. Let's see. Want to make sure we skip the hellos and whatnot. Monica says, yay, shout out for multi-author books. Hey, y'all, check out Aspire Women Finding Their Purpose on Amazon. The proceeds go to charity. We became an international best-selling authors with a fabulous book. Awesome, Monica. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Ray says here, we have talked about collaborations to start. My question is, when you get stuck? Okay, that's a great question, Ray. So what do you talk about writer's block and getting stuck in the process? What are some ideas for getting unstuck?
Sometimes what I told my students when I was teaching English composition in college, if you feel stuck, do a free writing exercise. Grab pen and paper. There's something very magical about grabbing pen and paper and putting pen to paper and just write for 5 or 10 minutes without censoring yourself. Do not censor yourself. Just write down whatever comes to my mind, even if it's, I can't think of something to write. I can't think of something to write. I can't think of something to write. And after 5 or 10 minutes, review what you've written, because chances are the things that came to your mind are things that you were directly thinking about right now. And now you're just aware because now you are paying attention to your thoughts and writing down exactly what you're thinking. There might be something salvageable there. If there's not, try it again. Sometimes, though, the answer is to walk away from it and not come back to it for a couple days.
Yeah.
There's one client that I was working with. The book was basically done, and I wrote the intro last, which might sound kind of weird, but the book was done. So the book was done. So now I knew how to set it up because I already knew what the book said.
Exactly.
There was one day, it was on a Tuesday. I remember this very, very well. I wrote about 100 words and then I got stuck. I just felt utterly powerless. And so I moved on to something else. And 3 days later on Friday, I came back and it just flowed. I'm like, where was this 3 days ago? And it was brilliant. It was brilliant, but it took time. I had to allow myself time to get away from it for 3 days. And then I came back to it. So sometimes you just have to walk away from it and come back to it with a fresh set of eyes.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. That's a great answer. John says here, he says, Chris, your book, How the Teacher Became the Student and Then the Guide. Wow, how the teacher became the student and then the guide. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Ray says, fire, Jock. So I guess Ray likes it. Let's see. Sandy says here, I have too many ideas. That's where I struggle. What are some thoughts on that one?
If you have too many ideas, you might be trying to write more than one book at a time.
Oh, yeah.
I had a client once who wanted me to help him write 4 different books. And he called me one morning at 8 o'clock while I was driving down the street. And he said, I'm just overwhelmed. And I let him talk for a while. And I said, is it possible that you're trying to write all 4 of your books at once? And he said, maybe. I said, so here's what you do. Grab 4 different notepads or 4 different sheets of paper, however you want to do it. Write the title of each book at the top of each individual page. And when you get an idea, critically analyze which book that belongs to. If it's not your current book, write down enough that you won't forget it, and then just leave it alone and focus on your current book. So if you've got too many ideas, chances are you've got more than one book in your head, and that's fine. So pick one strategically that you should write first. Sometimes your first book isn't going to be your life story. Maybe your first book, if you've got a business, maybe your first book is going to be something related to your business, maybe a lead generation kind of thing for your business.
Sure. That's a good point. One thing I wanted to bring up, I totally forgot about this when you were talking. I bought these books. I think I bought them. Where did I buy them? At a dollar store or something like that. This one's called The Story of Your Life. The Story is in You. And what's cool about this is I bought it just for the kicks. I mean, it was like super cheap, but in the first page, it says, make a basic timeline of your life, list the years of your increments, and write one short sentence that describes a major event that happened in each year. Fill in any major events and gaps. So it's got like from 1 to 5 years old, 6 to 10 years old. This is a book of all sorts of different writing prompts. What did you want to change about your home life and why? The first time I drove a car, the first time I did something illegal, top 10 things that motivate you and got you excited. So there's this one. Then there's this other one called The 300 Writing Prompts, which is along the same thing. I've never written in anything, but I thought, when I was having challenges like coming up with content for blogs and stuff like that, I would just grab this thing and it says, write about your first childhood home, and your first apartment or house that you own. So it's all sorts of different writing prompts. So I dig these things if I'm ever stuck.
Yeah, those are really great ideas, especially for short form things like a blog post or a Facebook post or something like that. Because here's the thing, if you write a blog, for example, you might have enough blog entries if it's around a single topic to eventually have something. I interviewed Jeffrey Gitomer for my 100th episode of my radio show several years ago. And I said, when did you decide to write a book? He's like, I never decided. I just wrote a blog about all the stupid things that salespeople do. And after 100 entries, I realized I have a book.
I love it. I love it. Look what we got here. We got from coming over from YouTube. We got the Gabe Leal Experience. Thank you so much for being here. They have a question that says, so how can you start becoming a ghostwriter? There are things I want to write, but I don't want to publish as my own content. Great question. Thank you.
So here's what I did. I decided that I could be a ghostwriter because I had already written a book and I had already taught in a 2-year business college. I taught English composition. So I already knew I could do it. If I could do it for myself, I could do it for someone else. And so I just started declaring, this is what I do. I do this. I had no portfolio, but a friend of mine wanted to write a book and he wanted me to be his coach. He says, Brian, I know that you don't have a portfolio and I don't have money. So do it pro bono and I'll give you a brilliant testimonial when we're done. I'm like, I'll do that. Sometimes you have to be willing to do your first one for free or almost free or in exchange for something. You can't obviously make a living doing that, but sometimes people will ask you for samples of your work. Thank God I had that testimonial first. And thank God that some of my early clients did not ask me for samples of my work. I could have sent them my book, which would have been fine because I did have one book, my student leadership book at the time. But yeah, after I had a portfolio, only then were people starting to ask me for samples of my work. I'm like, thank you, God, for letting that question hang out for a while before it came up. But I just started declaring. I mean, my advantage was I had written a book already, so I had something to fall back on, and I had taught other people how to write, so that I could fall back on. But I just started declaring to the universe, I do this. It took a while for me to get my first client. It was several months of me telling people, I do this. I do this.
Right.
So here's the thing. Write something valuable about writing every single day. Post on Facebook, something relating to writing. And if people start seeing you post about a topic often enough, they will automatically assume, oh, he must be the expert in this.
Yes.
He must be an expert in this. So just start writing every single day about the topic of writing.
Love it. I love it. Thank you, brother. I hope that answers your question. If not, let us know again. What you like from us, guys. Ray says here, amazing input, Brian. Thank you. Sandy also says here, thank you, Brian. Great advice.
Thank you.
Jock says here, my first book was not the book I wanted to write. And then he went back and wrote it. Actually, I just got his other book. I'm reading 2 of Jock's books right now at the same time. I have one eye on one book and one eye on the other book. I'm just kidding. Monica says you're super helpful, Brian. So thank you for that. We got Darlene in the house. Thank you, Darlene, for tuning in from East Coast. Appreciate you. Jacqueline says here, this is one of my questions, actually. She says, how do you get on the bestsellers list? My buddy Walt McKinley, you may have seen some of his social media posts. He went through all the rigmarole to get on the bestsellers list for Amazon and whatnot. Talk to us about that. I have mixed feelings about that process and everything about that. So what are some of the components engaged with that idea?
I think the bestseller lists do have a bad rap because there are people out there who teach about how to game the system.
Yep.
I do say pick niche categories. Now, caveat to that is, in order to serve your potential reader, pick categories that actually do relate to your book. If your book is about overcoming breast cancer and one of your categories is underwater basket weaving, that doesn't help the person that actually is looking for a breast cancer book, right?
Right.
But there are people, I've seen bestseller books on Amazon. I look at their categories. I'm like, this has nothing to do with the book. So there is an integrity issue there.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a way, though. I mean, you can look at the books in your niche that are currently on the bestseller list. Look and see what categories they picked.
Good idea.
Right. why reinvent the wheel? If somebody got to number one in a category, what are those categories? Look at the top 10. Did they all make it in the same category, or did they pick different categories? Did they pick categories that appear to have something to do with their book? And here's another ninja tip. When you're asking people to buy your book, ask them to buy it on the same day, because Amazon sees that a bunch of people bought your book and you get ranked, and the rankings change every hour, every couple hours or whatever. And the algorithm will move your book up in the rankings based on how many people are buying your books that day. But another ninja tip is ask people to buy more than one.
Yeah.
And give them as gifts.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've got friends who will routinely buy 10 copies of my book every time I release one. I've got great friends, y'all.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way. I've seen my buddy Walt go through it, and he's doing above board and everything. So I mean everything was going to plan. It's just, I mean, I sit there and I think about the people who told me they've had a best-selling book. I've never verified if they had a best-selling book. So part of me is just like, yeah, I'm actually gonna do that with my book. I'm sure it'll be a bestseller. But at the same time, one of my coaches told me, like, why don't you just start calling yourself the world famous no excuses coach? I'm like, huh? Like, nobody's going to go, once you own a title, nobody's necessarily going to go back and double check that. For me, it would be an integrity issue. I'd want to be able to say wholeheartedly I'm a bestseller. But yeah, I've been mixed, because I've seen people game the system, and I've seen books that were on the bestseller list, and I'll keep a note of it, and I'll go back and check in 4 weeks, and they have 3 reviews, and I'm like, okay, you only have 3 reviews, and you supposedly made it to that that spot. And thinking about, let's actually catch Jock's comment here. He's in that business. Personally, I believe bestseller lists should be extended to external to Amazon, and also be recognized by publishing authorities, i.e. Publishers Weekly. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a time and a place for it. And I mean, some people, I mean, if you think about this, if you're asking people, where should I buy a book online, 99% of the time, the answer is going to be Amazon. So it is recognized. I think there are people, though, that do understand that you can game the system a little bit. I think there's legitimacy if you can say you're a New York Times bestseller, or a USA Today bestseller, or a Wall Street Journal bestseller.
Oprah.
Yeah, Oprah. I mean, you have to sell thousands of copies in a week, in the same week, in order for that to happen. And the money that it requires to generate that kind of a marketing campaign can be pretty extensive.
What's extensive?
Amazon is a
little,
little
talking thousands or millions?
Probably thousands.
To get on New York Times bestseller?
New York Times bestseller, yeah. Probably more. And you would probably have to get on a bunch of national media shows all at once. I mean, think about this. When you see people on the talk shows, when do you see them? When they have something to promote.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it for shiggles. They're doing it because they have a reason, agenda. When Tom Cruise is promoting his latest movie, you see him everywhere for about 2 weeks, and then you don't see him again until he's ready to promote another movie.
Mm-hmm. So true. So
be strategic.
Yeah. Let's see. Jock says here, NYT 3,000 in the first week. Woo! That's like, I got some work to do. Yeah. Honestly, all that stuff seems like a whole lot of stress.
Yeah.
But something that occurred to me when I was thinking about this is, back in the day, I was thinking about old times and thinking about you and I was thinking, like, back in the old days when we had an idea, what do? We wrote it down on a piece of paper, we put it in an envelope, and we mailed it to ourselves. And as long as it was sealed, that was a protected idea. Yeah. In this day and age, what are some of the things that people need to consider? Because I know I've had people tell me, like, oh my God, I've got the greatest book idea, but I'm afraid that, once I say it, then it's going to be, somebody's going to duplicate it, and they're going to put the idea out there faster. What are some ways we can actually look at the different aspects, like copyright versus trademark versus intellectual property? Talk to us about some of those legalities, and that people should really focus and key in on if they've got something that seems like a unique idea.
Consult with an intellectual property attorney.
That's a good point.
Because I am not that person.
What have you seen in your travels and the things that you've heard from other people, things to watch out for?
Yeah. Well, I think there are going to be an infinite number of books on any given topic.
Oh yeah.
So it's your spin. So, I mean, people can't steal your stories, right? And if they do, it's not going to ring true.
Right. I think about for a while, I was on this whole thing. Like I had the Kickass guide to life. I had the blue collar guide to life. I had the rock and roll guide to life. So much like the chicken soup for the soul, I was going to do these guide to life, different books with different connotations, like the cookbook guide to life. It was all about cooking and the guide to life and how to live and using analogies and stuff like that. So if I had that idea in my brain, what are some ways that I could go about protecting that? Obviously would I trademark it, or would I have to like write, do you know anything about those particular aspects?
I don't know a lot
Okay.
about that. I would just say consult with an intellectual property attorney, and I know somebody that I could refer people to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome.
That.
That's definitely something to consider. Another question that I had people asking me as I was preparing for this is publishing, going through a publish. Oh, go ahead.
And if I can add this, I did.
No, your time's up.
I did a seminar called Authorpreneur Live, and that's where my Facebook group name came from. But the third iteration of Authorpreneur Live, I did have intellectual property attorney speak during one of my sessions. Authorpreneurlive.com. I'm not selling, but the recordings are available for $47 if you want to check it out. There's 12 sessions. You get 12 hours of content, basically, all around the idea of writing, marketing, publishing, all that. Cool. So it's there, authorpreneurlive.com. But one of the sessions is about that. If you want to hear Tom Ladegard talk about all these kinds of things, that's a great place to go. And he's on Facebook too. Tell him I sent you. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that was good. That was good. I can't remember what I was going to talk about though. My brain just went out of left field. Like I told you, this raw and unscripted. So I'm coming up with the questions as I'm thinking about them. That's what it was. Publishing versus self-publishing. I know that back in the day, the desire was everybody had to get a publisher and I'm going to get a publisher. But for me, I actually think that self-publishing is probably a better route to go for myself. I figured that eventually, perhaps after a few books, I may get picked up by a publisher and they'll want to republish my books and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on both of those directions?
I've done both. So if you are self-publishing, you have complete and total creative control over your ideas and how your book turns out, and you get it to market a lot faster. The thing about having a publisher is they promise distribution because they have relationships with buyers. Now, the drawback to that is you might have to wait 6 extra months or longer for your book to come out, because very much like the fashion industry, book buyers are looking for what they want to put on their shelves 6 months from now.
Right.
So they're buying like far ahead, and bookshelf space is kind of limited. So, I mean, this book, my first Conversations with High Achievers book, was published by Morgan James, and I was in Barnes & Noble all over the place, and I did bookstore signings. I did probably 15 bookstore signings.
Oh, how exciting.
Area. Oh, that was fun. Bookstore signings are fun. And then I ended up doing volume 2, and I picked a different small publisher for that. But greatest lessons I learned from my dad was totally self-published. But the thing about this book, they had some input as to what the cover was going to look like and what the title was going to be. So I had to give up what I was married to in order for them to do their magic. And so you have to defer. Now, here's the other thing too. Even if you do go with a publisher, it is your job to market your book. It is your job to sell the book. They only promise distribution channels. They'll say, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Changing Hands Bookstore, whatever the deal is. But just know this. I mean, Barnes & Noble is the big elephant in the room, and Amazon is the big elephant in the room. That's it. And if your book is in bookstores and it stops selling, the bookstores will return those, and those pre-sales get charged back to you. So it's not all glamorous. It's fun. It was really great to be in Barnes & Noble, and I have pictures, and I can say forever that I am a Barnes & Noble author. But your book has to keep selling, or that precious bookstore space, that bookshelf space, is going to go to somebody else.
Did that happen to you in that particular situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are probably still a couple books a couple bookstores where, a few where this book is still available, but it's not in as many stores as it used to be. Now, here's the thing. If people start requesting the book again, they might order some. And when I did my Barnes & Noble bookstore signings, the manager of the store would order, however many copies, and they would keep the ones that didn't sell for a while just to see if they would sell, because they promote it too. The Barnes & Noble locations will promote to their list, to their followers, hey, we have such and such an author coming in this Saturday from noon to 4, noon to 3, whatever. And they might order 15 or 20 copies. And if I sell 10 or 12 of them, they might keep the rest of them around for a while. But if they figure out after a few months that they still have the same number of books left, they'll just send them back and get their credit back. And then the publisher charges me back.
And then you have a garage full of books.
Yeah.
So what happens in that situation if you want? Are you able to, in the contract, because that's another question we could go into, but that would take too long. Do you have the opportunity to have your own books and to sell them on your own, or did they have to go through the publisher at that point?
Oh yeah. In fact, with Morgan James, and I don't know if other publishers work like this or not, they require you to buy a certain number of copies of your own book.
Oh.
Because what if your book doesn't sell? This is how they get their money back, is by requiring you to buy X number of copies of your own book. Whenever, not all up front, but just whenever. But you're bound to buy. I still have not bought all of the copies I'm required to buy from my publisher yet. And it's been almost 4 years. I still have to buy 600 more copies of my book. Which I will.
How many did you have to buy altogether?
I had to buy 1,500, but I negotiated that. They wanted me to buy more. And I'm like, no.
Wow. So in hindsight, would you do a publisher again for that book, or would you just self-publish?
I would just self-publish. Now, if somebody came along and offered me a huge advance, that's an experience I'd like to have.
I know, huh? That's what I've heard. I've had a lot of my friends, go through the publishing or non-publishing route. And the thing that I've gained for myself is, the creative control. I've had, my buddy went through Hay House. He had a couple of books written through Hay House, and he told me confidentially, I won't say his name, but he told me confidentially, he goes, this is fucking miserable. He goes, the hairs they're splitting and the things they want me to say and this, that. I'm like, oh my God. But once you sign on that dotted line and you get that advance, what they want and what their suggestions are, usually is what you have to go with. And I don't see that. I see myself self-publishing. I have a few people interested in this book, the book I'm writing about, my mom and myself, but I see self-publishing that I see down the road where there's an opportunity where they'll buy those and then obviously, distribute them then or something like that. But I'm not even worried about that.
And publishers won't take everybody who inquires, because their agenda is, can we sell this?
Yeah.
Will we make our money back? Because they have to put in time, money, and resources into getting your book put together. And of course, the distribution and it's a crapshoot. How many copies will Barnes & Noble buy nationwide? How many copies will Books A Million buy nationwide? They're just guessing. And if they sell out their allotment, they'll buy more. And if they bought too many, they'll return the ones that didn't sell. It's a guessing game. It really is. It
is. Before I ask people where they can get a hold of you and I take some of these comments, what are your thoughts on taking your book? This is the one I've done that I have not published. You get a little ISBN. What are your ideas about going and putting this on the shelf, putting a couple on the shelf at Barnes & Noble? It's got the ISBN number. Somebody sees it and they like it and they go up to the cash register and they scan it and it's like, oh, it's not in our system.
Reverse shoplifting.
You know who I'm talking about.
I do. I don't think I've ever done that, but I know people who have done that.
Oh, really? They actually did it?
Yeah. In fact, I've been in Barnes & Noble and I've seen books that I think probably were done like that. It's like, but it's an interesting idea. It's worth trying. See what happens. I mean, if you've got a bunch of extra copies and it didn't cost you very much to get it printed, why not?
Yeah. Sure.
Try it.
Yeah. Might be. I don't know if there's any legal ramifications of that. I would hate to have that happen, but when I was thinking about who we know and that marketing trick that he used to tell us about. I was like, I wonder what Brian thinks about that. So yeah.
I've not done it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either, but I thought that'd be kind of fun to see what your thoughts were on that. John says, Hay House sucks big time. We could probably talk offline about that, John. I actually know. Yeah, I won't even say that. I keep anonymity because I usually forget who it is. I don't remember who it is, but I know something. John says here, new authors don't realize upfront payments have to be repaid. Yes. No, thank you. He also says here, or sign them all so they can't send them back. LOL ninja tip. That is crazy. Robert says here, you are a spectacular person too, Brian, in my opinion.
Well, thank you.
So love that. So, man, we've already been talking for nearly an hour. Where can people get a hold of you to continue this conversation? Because I'm sure there's going to be many more questions. A lot of people watch it on replay as well. So where can people get a hold of you to kind of get more about Brian?
Yeah. BrianKWright.com. You can see my name spelled on the screen. There it is. BrianKWright.com is my website. You can learn all about me there. There's also another site called WriteABookForYou.com. Spell all the words out. Write a book for you, FOR, WriteABookForYou.com. You can find out what I do. There's testimonials from happy clients. There's a segment from The List. I was on the nationally syndicated show, The List, where I talk about 3 things you can do to get started writing your book. And there's a link to my calendar at the very bottom of the page. So WriteABookForYou.com.
WriteABookForYou.com. Also, they can get you a hold of you on email, bwrightcycloneaz@aol.com. Right. So for you guys listening, that's BWRIGHTCYCLON as in Nancy, EAZ as in zebra @AOL.com.
Yep.
If I was in the military, I'd go Victor, Bravo, Shanker, whatever the stuff all the military people say. And then of course they can go check out, we didn't even get a chance to talk about this, Success Profiles magazine as well. So they can get a hold of you.
So people can subscribe to Success Profiles magazine. It's a digital magazine that comes out every single month. I've got people who subscribe monthly, I got people who subscribe annually, and I've got people who pay one time and never pay again.
Oh, nice. And so talk about some of the people you featured in that magazine.
Kevin Harrington was my very first one. And that was a really fun experience because I had purchased the domain for Success Profiles magazine a couple years before I actually did anything with it. And when I was paying for it for the 3rd year, I realized, oh, Brian, you keep talking about this and you haven't done it. It's not you should, it's now you must.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be that guy who always talked about it and never did it. So I went back through my archives and thought, well, gosh, who would be a really great first cover? Well, I'd interviewed Kevin Harrington 6 months prior. And so I emailed him and I said, Kevin, thanks again for being on my show a few months ago. I've got a new thing that I'm doing now called Success Profiles Magazine. It's an offshoot of my show. I will just carry material from the original interview that we already did. I don't need any extra time from you. Big clue there. If you want to work with someone high up, make it easy. Don't demand more time. Don't demand them to do a bunch of stuff. We've already done the interview. I'll just use part of that. All I just want are really great photos. And 90 minutes later, he emailed me back and said, I'm in. And so I got a bunch of people who wanted to contribute articles. And some of those people are still with me now, over 4 years later. Nice. And I got a few printed. I went to an event that I knew he was speaking at. He was the keynote speaker at an event in LA, the first weekend in December 2017. And so I took a bunch of copies there. And before the event, I saw him in the hallway. I said, Kevin. He's like, Brian. We recognized each other instantly. I knew who he was, but he'd seen my picture. So that's how he recognized me. I said, I have something for you. He's like, what's that? And I showed him the magazine. I said, ooh, he's like, I love the cover. I said, I know you do. I'm sure you do. Thank you. And he said, is this a digital magazine where people just can subscribe online and you guys print a few of these out for events like this? I said, yeah, exactly. He says, well, part of my presentation is about digital marketing. Is it okay if I hold a copy of this at the audience while I'm talking? That would be great. Yes.
I think so. Yeah. Can I come up on stage, take a picture with it? Yeah.
So actually the photographer at the event did take a picture of him holding it up, and Kevin Harrington's Instagram account posted a picture. I was not on Instagram yet, so he couldn't tag me.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I did save that picture and I posted it on Facebook. And the photographer also snapped a picture of him shaking my hand and giving me a high five before he talked. And I did not know for 2 weeks that picture had been taken. It's one of my favorite pictures. In fact, it's my Twitter cover photo.
That is awesome. That is awesome, man. I have so much respect for you. I'm so proud of you for everything that you've done. You've stayed the course. You've been committed. You've been consistent. You're passionate about getting the message out there. So, brother, huge respect to you. Thank you for being on the Raw&Unscripted show. I'm going to place you backstage here for a second. I'm going to finish out the show. Don't go anywhere because I still want to chat with you for a second. Right. But thank you, brother, for being here. Connect with Brian, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. So there you have it, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, just under an hour. I try to keep these things under an hour. I am passionate about the subject matter and I appreciate you guys being here. Mary says here, she goes, thank you for the golden nuggets, Brian. Good evening, all. My buddy Scott jumped in the house. What's up, Scott? Thank you so much for being here, brother. Safe travels and everything you got going on. Mary says here, if not now, then when? Of course, I love that. It's so beautiful, guys. Time is going by. So please, if you got a book in you want a book, go write it. Ray, you are welcome. Ray says here, thank you, Brian, Chris, and family. Appreciate you guys. Jock says here, outstanding interview, great subject. I am passionate about too. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jock, for being here. And my message to you guys really is just take from this conversation, as always, what is it that you can do? Have you been thinking about writing a book? Have you got a bunch of ideas in your brain? More importantly, have you thought about writing your story? Getting into the nuts and bolts and the weeds of the things that you've been through, the challenges that you've overcome and the lessons that you've learned. Take what Brian has shared tonight. There's so many different aspects of what you can do to get your content, whether it's your blog post, if you have a podcast, different things that you put together, courses or whatnot. Think about what you can do with that and put pen to paper, put keys to the keystroke and create that book for yourself, create a legacy. Because I know for me in writing this book about my mother and I and the journey that we went on for her entire life, if nothing else, I know that's going to be a great representation for my son to really know what my life story was and is. And I think it's a powerful way for us to be able to share our message in such a way that we can impact other people. Like Brian said, you have a unique voice. You have a unique story. You have a unique opportunity that somebody out there needs to hear your message, not Chris's message, not Brian's message, not Jock's messages, not anybody else's message. They need to hear your message. And that's something that I've seen time and time again when people release books. Somebody bought me a book, gifted me a book 3 or 4 months ago called Inner Peace. I think it was called Inner Peace or Inner Freedom or something like that. Sorry, it's not here in front of me. And, I sat there and I have all these other books. I literally probably have 20 books that I have not read. I have probably 20 or 25 Kindle books that I have not read. I have Audible books I have not read. So I'm constantly buying books, getting gifted books. And I took the opportunity to read that book, man, it impacted me. So that book came at a time where literally I read the cover and I'm like, okay, I probably have a dozen of these books, but I just sat down and started reading the first couple of pages as I normally do to kind of get a flavor of what it is. And I read the whole book and it moved me in so many different ways. So think about what it is that you got going on. Connect with Brian. There's the thing about moving yourself forward in life, ladies and gentlemen. You can sit there and hope, wish, and pray. You can think about it. You could want to do it. You could put it on the someday calendar. But when you have experts in front of you, take the time to, at the very least, have a conversation with them. You will walk away perhaps with some bullet points and things that you can do in your own journey to get started. At least you may not be able to afford it right now, but what you can do is get a lot of the stuff done and then commit to yourself what it is that you're going to do differently in order to come up with those funds to be able to move to the next step. And I find so many people lately, they're like, well, I know the information's out there, so I'm going to go Google it and I'm going to do it on my own. And if I need you, I'll get you. You're just wasting time. You're just wasting time, ladies and gentlemen. This life is right now. The lessons that you can learn are right now. The investments that you can make right now, the sacrifices, and I know sacrifices are a tough word for people to hang on to, but there's so much other shit that you're out there buying. I mean, I catch people buying a new phone every 3 years. That's a lot of money, ladies and gentlemen. People are buying, I need a bigger TV. I'm like, how much more bigger of a TV do you need? But what else do you need for your life? What else do you need for your personal growth? What else do you need for the impact that you're going to make here in the world? And most of all, what it is that you need to take care of yourself. First and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, you got to take care of yourself. That's where it starts, by loving on yourself, by taking opportunities for yourself and pursuing the things that bring you joy. I asked somebody the other day, I know they were going through tough times. And I said, just tell me the things in your life that you think that you have to do that don't bring you joy. And they rattled off all these different things. And I felt so bad for them. And I felt so miserable for them. But at the same time, I said, what type of person would you be? How would you feel? And what would you get accomplished if you did not do those things that you were tolerating? And they looked back at me on a Zoom call and they were like, I can't even fathom the answer to that question because I'm so buried in everything else. And I simply asked them, I said, how's that working out for you? If you died tomorrow, would you be glad for the decisions you made recently? Would you be glad that you took all this time and that you were playing the someday game? Or is now the time for you to execute? Is now the time for you to pull the trigger on your goals, your health, your happiness? This is your life, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody else's. It's yours. There, I'm your coach. I love you guys. Let me see if we have any other quick questions or quick things that came up here. Robert says, thank you, Brian. Christopher, Ken Walls is live with blah, blah, blah. Okay. Monica says, yes, self-care is not selfish, but vital and necessary. Yes. So if there's anything that I can do for you guys in your journey, please reach out to me. If you guys haven't done a complimentary coaching session with me, hit me up. I'll send you the link. We'll do that. It's my gift to you for being a part of this show, for being a misfit for life, for supporting everything that Christopher Rausch does, the No Excuses Coach. It's my gift to you. Let's work together. Let's make things happen. All right. I love you guys. We'll be back here next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Put it in your calendar. It's always going to be a great show, a great conversation designed to move you forward in your life to become truly unstoppable. I love you guys.